Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle with over 2 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach, life leadership mentor, and certified Zentangle teacher. And I am so happy to be here with you again. Now, you are in the right place if you're a woman over 50 who's starting to feel time differently and want to stop coasting through life. Each episode helps you notice what's really going on in your life, recognize the moments that matter, and begin choosing your next chapter more intentionally. Today's interview is all about rewriting your story and one woman's creative way to do just that. But just quick, before we dive in, I want to make sure you know about a simple way to slow down and create space to think, especially in midlife. Inside the Midlife Doodle Think Club, we use mindful doodling as a noticing practice. You're not trying to fix anything. You're simply noticing your mind while you doodle. And that's where the magic happens. Because calm begins with noticing. There are no art skills required. If this sounds interesting to you, you can get the details at doodlethink.com. Now let's dive in. Today you're going to discover how writing a book can instigate insight into your own reinvention, especially when it's about midlife women. My guest today is Jennifer Oko. Jennifer is the author of 4 books of fiction and nonfiction. In her latest novel, Just Amelia, which came out just a month before her 56th birthday, she says that the writing and publishing of it forced her to reinvent herself in ways she couldn't even have imagined. This process required her to be really vulnerable, and in doing so, it has opened up a whole new world of possibilities. Jennifer's book, Just Amelia, is a darkly comic, time-bending story about 3 women, a troubled teen, a frazzled midlife mom, and an older woman grappling with regret, who discover that they are all the same person, trapped in a Washington, D.C. metro elevator and forced to confront an unresolved trauma that has shaped their lives. Like so many of us, the 3 women in the story discover that they have to untangle their past to be able to move forward. It's all about the exploration of identity and self-discovery. Readers have called it gripping, imaginative, and a perfect book club pick. Jennifer noticed that in her personal life, she really wanted to change that feeling of being pulled in 100 directions, and I bet you can relate to that too. For her, writing her book Just Amelia became her way back to focus and imagination and forced her to seriously contemplate what she wanted in her life, and really her sense of self, what she wanted all of that to feel like. Outside of her writing, Jen is also a journalist and filmmaker. She is co-founder of Because Media, a woman-owned production company that creates documentaries for outlets such as HBO, Netflix, PBS, and the New York Times. She lives in Washington, D.C., where she and her husband have recently become empty nesters. Well, perhaps we should say open nesting, as the 2 college kids do come back from time to time. Please enjoy this interview. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor. I love this podcast, so I'm thrilled to be here. Yeah, I've been listening.
Really? Thank you so much. Some people hop on and they haven't been listening, and I'm like, that's risky. When I'm on somebody else's show, I listen to at least one.
Yeah. Well, I love like you were just talking about your future self communicating to now, which we can come back to, but it was like, what a perfect segue into this novel that I wrote, right?
Amazing.
It's the same conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, it does have a lot in common. Well, that's good. So let's go back a little bit to your 40s. One of the things I love diving into on this show is decision making. I'm fascinated with behavior change, and when midlife gals can get insight into something they're thinking enough so that they question, is that just an automatic autopilot type of thought, or do I want something else, or what's going on here? So what was going on in your 40s, and why were you looking to make a change? What was that whole scene like?
Oh my gosh. It's funny when you asked me that question, like the image that comes to my head is just like chaos. You know,
Oh
I
my.
mean, I had my children at 36 and 38, right? So 40s, that was a lot of it. But
Hmm.
also my career was going in all sorts of wonky ways. And I had left, I had been at CBS News as a producer for many years, and I left my late 30s, let's say, but like on the cusp of my 40s. And, was trying to find my way doing other things in the world and sort of trying to be a little bit more independent. And trying to write novels while also trying to be a kind of freelance producer slash, I mean, I went in and out of actual jobs, freelance to jobs, to finally, by the end of it, mid to end of it, starting a company with a friend of mine. And so that was the big pivotal moment. We can come to that. But leading up to that, I mean, it's sort of like a blur. I mean, there was just so much that was going on. My son, when he was little, had really severe ADHD, still does, but now we know what to do with it. And he's channeled it for good. But before we knew what was going on, it was chaos, right? And that was a journey unto itself. And so it was just a lot, right? Trying to mother, have a career. My husband travels a fair amount for work, so he's sort of in and out. He's very, very present, but when he's here, but he does travel. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a hard time. It was a hard time.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And in your notes, you mentioned that you never really felt fully present with any of these roles that you had. And I totally relate to what you're saying. I also had my kids later around the same time as you, but the first one came in 95 when I was 33, and then, yeah, into my later 30s. And they ask me all kinds of times. They're saying, "Oh, what did I say? What was I like?" And I'm like, "Oh, it was a blur."
I know.
I let me look at those notes if I took
I
them.
know. No, it's terrible. Oh my gosh. And then I get them confused. I'm like, this one said this, and the other one's like, no, no, that's, she said that or he said that. Like you're remembering it wrong. I'm like, right, I've remembered your childhood's completely wrong. It's hard to keep it straight.
And I know when you're feeling pulled like that, it's just so challenging. It sounds like you wanted to stop that. You wanted to be more focused and stop being pulled in so many directions. Is that when you started to think, what do I really want? How am I going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say there was like some brilliant aha moment, but it was more that it, sort of funneled that way. And ultimately, I found myself back with an old friend. Her name is Miriam, trying to she was sort of in a similar boat. Kids roughly the same age, had also left CBS, was, going between straight freelancing stuff and sort of trying to make a go of it. And we sort of just came together and decided we were going to join forces and try to do what we'd really wanted to do, which was to do documentary filmmaking and somehow make a living at it, which is not an easy task. And so we've been really fortunate that we've been able to, we're old enough that we have a lot of contacts and people know us. And so some of our work is documentary filmmaking, which is our soul filling stuff. But then we also do sort of short form video projects for different nonprofits and NGOs and stuff like that. And we've been able to make it work. And I think that started to gel sort of as I was turning 50. And in fact, I remember my 50th birthday was at her house. She and my husband threw this wonderful party for me. And it really felt like it was this moment, right? It was a pivotal moment. And actually, it's funny because I know I reached out to you because of my novel, but I'd started writing Just Amelia when I was in my mid 40s. And I actually finished the first draft of it right around when I turned 50. And I remember like at that birthday party having this moment of like, I did it. Like I finally finished this draft of the novel, and Miriam and I had some good projects going on. And it sort of felt like, yeah, there was like an opening in our world that had gone from like, and also, as the kids get older, it's not that it gets easier, it just gets different. And but it's a little less chaotic. It's a little more controlled. I mean, obviously teenagers bring their own fun and games to the party, but
Lots
you
of
have
fun
more
games.
time, I guess, to focus on the things that you need to focus on, or I did myself. Yeah.
I love that you even noticed it, that the 50th birthday can be a very jarring milestone for many. Not everyone, but it can be. And now, like, I'm in my early 60s and I've also experienced the 60th birthday milestone, and it really felt different than the 50. And that was surprising to me. But I remember when I turned 50, I hadn't yet figured out what I was going to do. It was very soon. It was like a month or two after I received a layoff notice from my long-term job. So I didn't have things all figured out, but I didn't feel completely settled, but I felt better knowing that job, even though I didn't make the decision, but that job evaporated.
But there was,
And
but there was something like there was a decision. Yeah.
yeah. And for me too, my first kid went to university and I had the layoff, and it did seem like a turning point. We're definitely changing. And 50 can be jarring, but I just love that you had the insight that it felt not that you'd come home, but that you'd been a little bit more settled and a little bit more accomplished again.
It's funny because my 40th birthday party was also a pretty big party. And I remember that party being like, it was wonderful. People came. I was on crutches. I had knee surgery. So I was like on crutches at my own party. And I remember feeling like very happy to see everybody, but definitely out of sorts. Like I didn't feel quite as settled. And I will say, I mean, one of the things hold on to as I get older is that I've heard forever that as you get older, that your happiest years are actually ahead of you. And I kind of believe that.
Yeah.
And
Evidence-based.
bad days, but this idea that you're coming into yourself in this way and really able to ignore some of the voices that have been haunting you your whole life. Not all of them, not perfect, but again, I'm 56 now, so hopefully I have a ways to go, right? Hopefully there are years ahead where I can continue to shed the stuff that's damaging or destructive or negative anyway. I don't know. The writing Just Amelia, which deals with a woman who is 17, 47, and 77 at the same time, was an amazing experience for me personally, because I think it really forced me to become more compassionate with myself, with forgiving of that young child and sort of looking at that older woman and who in this case, my character, but in fairness, the character is sort of me-ish, lightly. It's definitely not a memoir or an autobiography, but she's, I write what you know. Which is very familiar to me, and trying to really kind of get into that headspace of what would you do if you're stuck and with your older and younger self, and you guys have to get your acts together and you've got to find a way to love each other, or you're just not going to proceed. It was a great exercise personally for me to do.
Yeah. Well, certainly in my coaching practice, curiosity and compassion, learning those skills, it's essential to having a breakthrough and moving forward. Like it's just super duper important, not to be eloquent at the moment, but what I'm curious about is when you tell me more about realizing that this was the book that you needed to write. Why did Just Amelia come to be at the beginning, and how different did it become as you started writing and realizing how much of the work you were working on yourself at the same time?
I mean, so my books, I have 3 books before Just Amelia. They are totally different, right? My first book is a memoir about a year I spent in Russia. My next 2 novels are these kind of, fun sort of mystery thriller comedy kind of, much more sort of quote unquote commercial. And Just Amelia is more, I hate labeling things, but it's more literary, right? It's speculative fiction if you have to put a label on it. But I mean, it came to me in this funny way. I mean, I think it was at that moment in my life where I was in this liminal space, I guess, of like, I actually remember, backing up a little bit. Now it just came to me. I remember my husband and I used to talk about this feeling of being in limbo. And when I was trying to develop ideas of sort of documentary ideas to pitch. I remember actually I'd come up with an idea about like living in limbo. And it was sort of an exploration of that time. This just literally just came back to me. But that was around that same time. And what happened was I was stuck briefly in this metro elevator, but with two other people, and really for just a millisecond. I mean, it was very short. It was not like we were in danger in any way, but it got me thinking, like, what would happen if you were stuck, and who are you stuck with? And originally my idea for the novel was that they would be people who are very, very different from me. And I just remember like sitting on my couch and actually like writing that first few sentences, which still are similar to what I wrote back then. But then just coming to this idea that actually I think the hardest person to be stuck and trapped in a small space like that would be yourself, and like really having to be forced to confront yourself as a child.
And often without tools. Like if you don't know anything about mindfulness, if you don't know that you're not your thoughts, that just because you think something doesn't mean it's true, or that you have to continue thinking it, that it can be managed, it can be questioned, you can be curious about it, and you can decide if it's serving you. And if not, you can do something about it. So many people don't have tools. So we're just stuck, not only stuck in our stuck state of affairs, but also stuck without the tools to be curious and ask ourselves, why? Why are we thinking this? Do we even like our reasons for thinking this particular thing? I love the idea of being stuck in an elevator. I mean, I don't love the idea, but as you were telling me the beginning of the story, I had this quick flash to, it's kind of like being stuck on a deserted island, except a deserted island, you have more space, but in an elevator, you're like right there with people, much more like being right there with your thoughts.
And at times in the novel, right, there's no light. They're in the dark together. I mean, like metaphorically and actually in a fictionalized sense of it. One thing you said before that that really resonated with me was this question about decisions. Because when I was writing the book, when I was trying to figure out how to move it forward, it became really clear to me that there had to be, each of these women at 17, 47, and 77 had to be on the cusp of making some kind of decision. And that decision had to be impacted by something that had happened to her early in her life. And that's how the book's, like the real book, took off. When I started questioning what is the impact of our decisions that we make when we're young, and how does that change us as we go on and on and on, even when they're bad decisions or good, any decisions really. But, and then sort of playing this idea with the decisions and thought processes of a 16, 17-year-old whose brain isn't fully formed, whose, frontal lobe is, a big mess. We all had that, and we all made decisions back then in a messy state. And what happens when you're 47? What happens when you're 77? Because of whatever that person decided.
It's really interesting. And right away, like I made a huge decision when I was 19. And now that my kids are in their late 20s and one of them's even 30, I always think about it, because if they would have made this decision when they were 19, like I did, I had no idea how it was going to impact my life. And what the decision was to transfer schools and move from the Philadelphia area to Ontario, Canada, and enroll in the school where my boyfriend went, that I met in Fort Lauderdale on the beach. And so I can't believe I did that. This was before free trade. Nobody knew anything about Canada, Toronto. Like it was, I don't mean nobody knew, but my immediate people in my life, right. It seemed very foreign, even though, right. It's just not that.
And it
foreign.
Wasn't a time when you could be in constant communication.
You had to have a phone card.
Right. When I was in my mid 20s, I picked up and followed a guide to Russia, which was hence.
Oh, is that how you ended up there?
Yeah. And, but I remember too, like it was so much bigger because it was so expensive to call home. And I remember I think it was like AOL chat. Like I was able to chat with some friends really early days. Right.
Yeah.
But I was really alone. Like I was on a journey by
Wow.
myself, right? Whereas now it's so different. I think my kids, even just being when we were in college, right? I mean, I remember the phone booth and having to
In the hallway.
call, right? And now, my son calls me because he's walking from the dining hall to the library, and
Right.
and and we have the family chat that almost every single day, having this for dinner. Here's the cat.
That's exactly what's going on in ours. My husband is sending pictures of what's in the shopping cart from Costco. And my son right now, who's on an exchange in Europe, is like, I don't need that. I just want to see pictures of the dog.
That's funny. Well, so we have a big joke in our family because we all love chimichurri, the chimichurri sauce,
Yes.
largely because we love saying chimichurri. And so my son, somehow in the campus dining hall, they had chimichurri sauce, which is like weird, but whatever. So he sends us the picture of him eating chimichurri. And then we went out for dinner that night. And so my husband had to order the chimichurri. And so it's like with this whole text exchange, it's just chimichurri. But it's so
fun.
lovely because there's these touch points where you don't have to, just these little touch points. Whereas when we were in college, I mean, it was, okay, mom, I'm going to call you at X time on this day. And then we
A
have
big
this
deal.
much time. And
Yeah.
it's just so different. So moving to a different country was a bigger deal, I think.
Right. It was a bigger deal. I had to renew my student visa every 6 months with all of the international students. Americans weren't treated any differently. And I guess what really happened though is I had no idea how that decision might impact my life. No idea. I knew that if I broke up with the guy, that at least I was in a school that I really liked and I would stay. And I was very concerned about my education. I really loved being in this school. So I knew that wasn't at risk. And I had a very close relationship with his mom. And I know my mom appreciated that. But, the things I didn't understand was just how expensive it was going to be to go home regularly.
Yeah.
And one time I signed up for a study, I had to wear a heart monitor, like a research study at a hospital just for fun to make some money to afford the flight. It was crazy times.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
It's a really interesting idea. 17, 47, 77, like those are very different times of your life. And some decisions impact you and some don't. Yeah, so fear really surprised me over the years, and I have done some thought work to figure out where these moments of time came from, that I started to interpret them in a way that they created so much fear for me. And that is something that I have been able to trace. So I've been doing some of this kind of work, which is one of the reasons I like the idea of your novel. Myself and my coaching clients also work on it. We're very curious. Where did this stuff come from? When did I start thinking this way?
Yeah. I mean, I think fear and anxiety are really interesting in a weird way, creatively speaking, because in order to create something, you have to be really vulnerable. And that is terrifying. And so, yes, fear in and of itself, I mean, I definitely run anxious, and it can impact how I make decisions. But to be able to just be like, okay, I'm just gonna put this out there, and people are gonna do with it what they will, and that's really scary. And I've now done it 4 times, and each time I'm like, why did I do that? That was so scary. But in the end, I think it winds up being sort of a blessing, because it's like anything. Whenever you overcome your fear, whenever you've overcome some huge hurdle, it's this huge release, right? And so what was amazing about Just Amelia is this novel took forever. There's a lot of drama in how it ultimately got published that I don't need to go into, but it was just suffice it to say it was really painful. Lots of therapy, lots of issues around it. And it was just, I mean, it was a struggle and a half. And then it's out in the world and you're like, okay, like what's the response going to be? And one of the most amazing things happened. Before it came out, there were some advanced reader copies that were available, and some of them were digital, so we could send it off to whoever. And a bookstagrammer influencer from India direct messaged me and said something along the lines of, she's in New Delhi. She's like, it's 9 a.m. and I just finished Just Amelia, and I'm starting the day feeling inspired, feeling beautiful, feeling powerful. Thank you for this novel. And I was like, whatever anybody else says about it, I know that something that I put out into the world that had taken me 10 years to get there gave somebody in India a really amazing morning.
That's
And
so
it's
great.
like, and I have to remind myself because there are really bad days. I mean, publishing a book is hard. Promoting a book is way harder. How
Yes.
do you break through in this? It's like a podcast, right? There's a gazillion of them. How do you get
Yeah.
people to be like, "Ooh, read me, read me"? And so I have to, I remind myself of that story a lot because every time I do, I get goosebumps.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's so great.
yeah, it's really great. And it's funny because I still, I follow her and we're still sort of in touch now because I want her to know
You'll
how
meet someday. I'm sure you'll meet.
I hope so. I hope so.
There's
That would
another
be
part of
amazing.
this part of the story though that really stood out to me. You mentioned your kids. You mentioned how difficult this was to produce and how, how much like emotional toll it took to get it out of you and all of that. But in your notes, like whenever I have a new guest on, of course, I have an application and you fill out some things and I always highlight the things that really stand out to me. And one of the things you said was so important to you was to be a role model of determination and creative confidence for your kids. Now, determination I've heard before, but when you said creative confidence, my heart just opened.
Oh,
Creativity is so important for me too. I've spent so much time also trying to role model it, but not as aware as of what I was doing, why it was so important for me to communicate certain things to them. And they are very creative in a variety of ways because, of course, creativity is not just art. Tell me a little bit about what you meant by creative confidence, modeling that for your kids.
I think having some sort of faith or trust that what you're producing, what you're creating, what you're saying will have resonance. And understanding too that not everyone's going to love it and that you are going to get loads of rejections, but to still have that confidence to try.
Mm,
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when it works, when you successfully create something that gets out there that has resonance, I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? Um, it's it's funny. I've been actually listening to another podcast. You've probably, I don't know if you heard it, the telepathy tapes, but
no.
season two, oh, it's really good.
Oh, good.
The first season is all about non-speaking autistic people and how they communicate, and then this sort of idea that they communicate on different wavelengths. But the second season, which I just started listening to, is about creativity specifically. And I just was listening to the second episode, like literally this morning, and they were talking about how creativity is this like thing that you have to be available to receive. Like ideas, you have to be open to receiving them. And but they don't come unless you're doing the work. So, they were somebody was saying, some writer was saying, you still have to sit down, at your desk and write, even if nothing's coming out, because
Mhm.
otherwise the idea is going to come and you're not going to be there. You need to be there when the idea comes. Um, but I love this idea that there are ideas in the world floating around and you can be the vessel for it. And if you're in the right place and at the right time and have the tools and the skills because you've been working on them, you can express it. And so it's funny, people keep asking, like, where did you get the idea for Just Amelia, really? Like, how did it come and how did it all come together? And I've done a number of book clubs, which are so, so fun, but I also feel kind of like an idiot because most of the time, most of my answers are like, I don't know. It just kind of came to me. I don't know. It just, you know,
I get ideas in the shower. That's my number one place. If
yeah.
I did children's books at my last job about health issues, and whenever I had to title these books, I would always just know I'm just going to take my shower and it will come to me. And it did. And I think it's because not only is it comfortable, but we're not multitasking in there.
Yes. Yes.
I
I
think
wrote my
that's
first
key.
book when I was training for the New York City Marathon. Like, I mean,
Wow.
I had written, like, it started as a diary, and then I had this diary, and I was trying to think about, like, could this actually be a book? And then I took a writing class, and it's sort of, again, you're doing the work, but then you need to be able to receive the idea. And I remember
Yeah.
it's that ability to, like, open your mind. I've right now, my thing, I love in the summer, I take really long bike rides, and it's when your mind is just open that you can.
Yeah. I love that you pointed that out. And it does come up in my work too, this readiness to catch a desire, because midlife women tend to be so disconnected from knowing what they want and owning an actual desire. And so one of the things that does come up is the classic bucket list. And some people don't know what they want. Sometimes I don't know what I want. And so what does it take to get an idea, to catch it, and then to bring it into your heart so that you can decide if you want to do something with it? And when I was doing this work, I was doing some teaching, and I have some ideas about what I want to do, where I want to go, what might be on a classic type. I call it an unbucket list because I'm not crazy about talking about what you want to do in the same breath of what you're running out of time to do. However, if you find it motivating, that's great. And I was in a museum looking at wildlife photography. It was an exhibit. I love wildlife photography. And I walked by. It wasn't one of the most beautiful photographs, but it was really there to illustrate the migration of the monarchs. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, I want to go there. Yeah. And I was ready to own it. It didn't just hit me and leave. I didn't even say that's too hard, it's too far, it's too expensive, it's too remote. I didn't come up with all the excuses. I just noticed the desire and I allowed it. And I was so proud of myself.
It's funny. My bucket list, for lack of a better word, I really want to go to the Galapagos.
Oh, so do I. Yes.
That is expensive.
Yes, it is.
It is expensive and requires a big chunk of time, but it is definitely on the bucket list.
And so my advice with these sort of ideas is if you catch one, just allow it and don't force yourself to figure out how you're going to do it. Just focus on what it is that you want and let it be. And then another time you ask yourself, how am I going to do it? And your brain will ask different questions that won't squish your dream if you allow the what to be foundational enough. So right now I know I'm going to go, I want to go, and I'm just leaving it at that. And it will come.
It reminds me a little, I was just at, a friend of mine launched a novel the other day and I was at her reading and she was talking about how she had met with a coach years ago. And that coach had her write what she called wigs, 4 wigs, their wildest impossible goals, something like that. And one of the wigs that she wrote was to be reading at that particular bookstore. Oh. And she's like, and she still had the card, that she had written 10 years before.
I love that story. That's great.
Amazing. Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So now another one of the things that you talked about is something that so many writers talk about. I don't even know if there's any writers who don't talk about this idea that you need to write every day and that it's really hard. And I've heard different strategies, but it really can be a grind, even though you're doing what you want to do. So there's this conflict. I feel the same way with the podcast. It's one of my most rewarding endeavors. I find it extremely creative, and some days it just feels like a grind. So how did you become successful in being a consistent writer as you were creating your book?
I mean, it is small pieces, right? And making it so that it doesn't feel like you're scaling Everest. And what I did was, it was actually a friend of mine came up with this idea that she selected how many words were on a single page of something she had written, and there's 256 words. And so the deal is that you make with yourself, you have to write 256 words a day, and that's it. And if you write more, great. And if you can't and you're stuck and it's just 256 adjectives, so be it. But that's what you have to do. And you have to give yourself the grace to be terrible. And so my writing group, we're not currently active, but we have an ongoing text group where we just sort of like wrote today. But our name for ourselves is SFD, which means, am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Yes, you can.
It means shitty first draft. So that's the idea, is to be like, just get it on the paper and then worry about it. Now, I'm being a little disingenuous because I'm having a really hard time right now getting back to writing. I mean, it's really hard when you've got one book out in the world and I'm trying to promote it, and I've got my other hats on and trying to work on that stuff, trying to get the writing gears in motion. And so I'm in this like stupid state of, I have like 3 different manuscripts and I'm like, I'm going to work on this one. Nah, I'm going to work on this one. Nah, I'm going to work this. Never mind, I'm not working on any of them. And so I'm like trying to get to a place where I think I figured out which one I'm going to actually focus on. But this week I've been focusing on that one. And so I just need to sort of commit. It's like there's a little commitment phobia. And I'm trying to be like, it's okay. You can just fit. It's funny because the two of these manuscripts are practically finished. I mean, like in terms of the story, they're a mess. And it's like, I just want to be like, just finish the damn thing. It doesn't have to be good. You don't have to publish it. You don't have to sell it. Just show yourself again which is how Just Amelia started, by the way. It was like, let me see if I can do it again. Let me see if I can write another novel, beginning, middle, and end. And I remember writing the end and that moment. And of course, the end wasn't the end because then I sold it and we had to edit it and it was like, whatever. But I got to the end and it was miraculous, right?
Yeah.
So
It is
I'll
miraculous.
get there with one of these other ones.
So good. It's so good. Now, I know that you describe Just Amelia as a story about confronting your past and future selves and finding compassion for yourself in the process. And one of the things, as you've been mentioning, that's so unique is that writing this, getting it out of you, forced you to do that for yourself. And it kind of became self-fulfilling. So how much were you aware that that was going on? Was it a surprise or were you very clear that that was part of your ability to move the book forward?
I don't think it was like an intention, like, oh, I'm going to write this in order to like, quit my therapist or whatever. I think it was more that these are the things that are swimming around in my head as a woman in midlife, right? And that's what shows up on the page is the stuff that you're swimming around with. And, I started writing it and a lot of it is about mothers and daughters. And, my daughter was young when I started writing it and she's 17 when I finished, which is the age of one of the protagonists, which was a little awkward, but also kind of beautiful. And my mother obviously has aged too, right? And in this process and sort of watching all that happen and trying to sort of contain all that or sort of hold it somehow. Those are really hard things and they take up a lot of mental space. So it's, to me, not surprising really that that's what came out on the page. I think what's more surprising is that it doesn't come up more often. I mean, it's just like, who isn't thinking about this stuff? I don't know. I just assume every woman I know is thinking about a lot of this stuff, right?
Sometimes. Yeah. Not everybody, everybody does it in a different way. And the other thing though, that you mentioned that, I got very happy to see, because I've experienced this also in my coaching, group, is the importance for you of surrounding yourself with other similarly aged women working through similar things. And you hung out with a cohort of writers in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. One of the groups that I offer is called Women in the Middle Academy. And one of the surprising things for me, being a coach in this space now for 12 years, was that that was more important than I even expected. That hearing other people's stories, what they're struggling with, what they're accomplishing, their inspiration, their motivation, their challenges, it's very inspirational. And you don't feel like you're alone. So for the writing process, how did that work for you?
So the group came together, that particular group, the cohort of authors who had books coming out at the same time came up after, we already had the books were sold and we were in the process of editing them together. They were all going to be launched at the same time. So it's more about, actually, it's really funny because a lot of it's about how to help each other in the promotion of the book, which is hilarious because none of us are really good at the whole social media thing. And oh my gosh, quick aside, trying to get comfortable in that space was the biggest challenge of all. And actually, surprisingly, as much as I hate it, it was also really fun. And it's funny too, because I would talk, I have one of the TikToks I did is with one of these other authors who's actually about 10 years older than me. And it's so goofy. But we were like cracking, I don't know if it sold any books, but we were cracking up because it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I don't know. The whole thing's ridiculous. The social media, TikTok, all of it just is not my comfort zone. It's not their comfort zones. And so for all of us trying to be like, okay, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to do this new world. I actually wrote an essay for, it's called She Writes. It's a website focused on women authors. And it was about learning to promote a novel with a different generational twist, like that because I was promoting a novel that actually involved different generations of women, it was really important that I actually understand how to promote a novel in this generation with this type of media, which is not my comfort zone. But it's also been really nice because then I have some of these new friends of mine who are all over the country. We've never met. I met a couple in person because they're in DC, but most of them are elsewhere. And, just sort of comparing notes and sort of, mortifications together. It just makes it more fun.
Yeah. But the visibility thing in midlife it can be challenging for many. It's certainly something I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs about in midlife. So this was a big change for you, and you realize and you talk about that change doesn't happen in one big leap. It happens for writers word by word, day by day. I like to think it happens one thought at a time as well, and just taking the next best step. But what is so obvious is that midlife gave you the urgency to stop putting a dream on hold. And that is so interesting about time sensitivity in midlife, is that sometimes it just is there to freak us out. And other times we're like, wow, what does this mean? How am I going to regret proof my life? Am I going to have a regret about this if I don't take action? What am I waiting for? Is fear the thing that's stopping me? Like all that stuff. So in your case, it gave you the urgency that motivated you to move your dream forward. I loved hearing that.
I feel that very strongly. And again, it's sometimes in a negative context, like, oh my gosh, time is running out. But more it's like, okay, I'm 56. So if I'm lucky, I have somewhere between 20 and 30 good years left. What am I going to do with them? And looking back and realizing how fast the last 30 went. I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? I mean, I just became an empty nester, and every time I see little kids out on the street, I just want to break down crying or like grab the parent to be like, you don't know how fast this is going to go. But if that went that fast, then that's going to go that fast in the other direction, right? It's not like a freak out thing. It's just like time is precious, and you want to use it. You want to do good things with it.
Yes, we have the privilege to age, and we need to capitalize on that because not everybody has that privilege, and there is no certainty. When you really think about what you're waiting for, until you look better in a picture, till you don't have the visibility issue on a TikTok video, until all your ducks are in a row. I
once saw a therapist. I loved her, but I haven't seen her in a few years. But she called herself an existential psychologist, and I was like, "What does that mean?" And she goes, "It means that you're here and then you die. Like this is it. This is your go around on this merry-go-round. This merry-go-round. This is your chance. And basically, that's it. And I mean, who knows? Maybe there's an afterlife. Maybe we have second lives. But right, this is the one you're going to know. This is the one
exactly.
Right.
Bottom line, that's it. So tell us, how can we find your book, Just Amelia?
Well, the easiest way to find Just Amelia probably is to go to my website, which is www.jenniferogo.com, and you can see my other books there too. You can get it on Amazon. You could get it at bookshop.org. I love bookshop.org. Some of the proceeds go to independent bookstores. And actually, if you buy from that site, more of the money goes to the publishers and the authors than it does if you go to the other site. But those are the easiest ways, certainly. Hopefully your local library has it. It's in some libraries. It's in some bookstores. You should definitely ask your bookstores and libraries for it. But definitely the easiest way is online.
Amazing. And I know that you feel strongly about this. I do too. It is never too late to rewrite the story. Even when you feel stuck, you can always continue to move forward if you ask yourselves the right questions and you're just ready, like that openness to receive and to examine what's possible. So good. Jennifer, this was really fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I'm going to have a great day now. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Amazing. Me too. All the best.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. We all carry our past and future selves with us, right? Our younger, older, and present selves are always in conversation, but being able to notice what they have to say and learn how to listen with compassion and without judgment, That's a different story. And I think you also probably noticed a recurring theme in the podcast with Jennifer's story. It's never too late to rewrite your story. Even when we feel stuck, we have the power to change the way we think about our lives and the choices we've made along the way. Possibility really is endless. To move things forward, it really is all about taking what I call the next best step. This message was loud and clear the way Jennifer shared her writing experience. She shared how important it was for her to start small, but start. Just start. Big change can come from tiny, steady steps, like writing 266 words a day. And that's what builds momentum, even when you feel stuck. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Women in the Middle show. Please remember to share it with your friends and other midlife gals that you know would get a lot out of it. You can also leave us a review, which is much appreciated. Being the queen of your brain domain, I think it's really the best way to be, because it's time to stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the happiness, excitement, joy, and fulfillment that you crave. Remember, if you need coaching support for the changes you're excited to make in midlife, I'm here for you, and I offer group and private coaching. As well, I offer a private 50-minute conversation to help you get clear on what you want now. You can go ahead and book that. It's called your Next Chapter Clarity Session at www.talktosusie.com. For show notes and links, go to www.susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 457. And you'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal, which is also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.